Zara Kincaid was used to quiet mornings. The soft hum of machinery, the gentle vibrations from the hub's engines, and the occasional chatter of aliens in the common hall formed the comforting soundtrack of her life. She had spent years on Orion Station, a neutral hub orbiting a star that humans had named Gliese 570. Here, humans and aliens mingled peacefully. Humans worked as engineers, pilots, or traders, while aliens of all shapes and sizes came to buy, sell, or negotiate. Zara's specialty was repairing and modifying technology that nobody else could understand. Some called her obsessive, but she preferred the word precise. She was tinkering with a small drone, adjusting its flight module when the comm system blinked red, a color she rarely saw except in emergencies. The loud, static-filled voice that came next made her freeze. "Who fixed my armor?" The sheer volume of the words rattled her tools. It was not just loud, it was commanding, echoing through the entire station's comms. Her heart raced. It was the Xiran Queen, the ruler of a species known for their towering size, iridescent scales, and strict hierarchy. Even a minor insult to her or a delayed response could result in extreme consequences, usually unpleasant for everyone involved. Zara swallowed hard and activated the channel. "This is Zara Kincaid, human engineer. How may I help, Your Majesty?" There was a pause. Static crackled. Then the voice bellowed again, softer this time but still urgent. "My armor. It is damaged. None of my technicians can repair it. You will come immediately." Zara blinked. Immediately?" She looked around at her small workshop. Her tools were scattered, half-finished drones and gadgets cluttering every surface. Repairing the Queen's armor was not just a task, it was the task. One wrong move and she could ruin centuries of craftsmanship, or worse, anger the Queen. But curiosity, something deeply human, nudged her forward. Why her? Why a human engineer? Most Xirans had little respect for human abilities. The Queen could have chosen any of her own top technicians. Yet somehow Zara was selected. Before she could overthink it, she packed her tools, double-checked schematics stored on her tablet, and boarded the station's small shuttle. The hum of the engines, the vibration beneath her feet, and the familiar smell of recycled air calmed her nerves. She reminded herself, humans were good at solving impossible problems. That was something even the Xirans did not expect. The shuttle docked at the Xiran flagship, a massive vessel that glimmered like a jewel in space. Its hull shifted colors depending on the light, a display of the Xirans' love for beauty and technology. Zara stepped out and her breath caught. Even from a distance, the Queen's aura was intimidating. The towering figure moved with grace despite her size, scales shimmering in subtle patterns and eyes glowing faintly. Courtiers and technicians surrounded her, their postures stiff with respect, or fear. Zara Kincaid. The Queen's voice was calm now, almost melodic, but it carried an unmistakable weight. "You have arrived. The armor waits." Zara nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, Your Majesty. I will do my best." They moved to a massive chamber where the armor was displayed. It was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. Smooth, segmented plates of metal-like material glimmered, etched with patterns that seemed to move as though alive. Tiny energy filaments crisscrossed its surface, pulsing softly. Every Xiran technician who had touched it had given up after only minutes, muttering about unreadable energy signatures and unstable adaptive plating. Zara's eyes widened. She knelt beside the armor and gently ran her fingers over the surface. The material felt almost organic, warm, and responsive. She could sense the complexity of the design. Instead of panicking, she smiled. This was a puzzle, and humans loved puzzles. "Where should I start?" she asked, though she already had an idea. "Where you like, but beware. The armor is sensitive. Handle it incorrectly, and it will reject your modifications." The Queen's eyes studied her carefully. There was curiosity there, something Zara had not expected. Perhaps the Queen had heard of human ingenuity. Perhaps she hoped for it. Zara pulled out her tools and began to examine the armor systematically. First, she identified the energy nodes that powered the suit. They were delicate, responsive to touch. Then she mapped the mechanical joints, noting how each segment was connected to the other. Unlike Xiran engineers, Zara did not rely solely on schematics. She observed, she touched, she listened to the machine in a way that machines seemed to respond to, human intuition guiding her hands. Hours passed. The courtiers watched silently. The queen moved closer, intrigued by the human who was neither hurried nor fearful. She observed how Zara adjusted a tiny filament here, twisted a joint there, always gentle, always careful. Unlike the Zirans, who often approached engineering as a test of strength and precision, Zara approached it as a conversation with the armor. Finally, Zara paused and stepped back. The armor seemed to hum slightly, a vibration Zara interpreted as approval. She smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement. "I think I understand it," she said softly. "It's adaptive. It changes according to the wearer's energy and intentions. If we align the circuits with your energy patterns, it should stabilize." The queen leaned forward, her massive form towering but her eyes focused and interested. "A human speaks of alignment. Interesting. Proceed." Zara nodded and carefully began her first modifications using a blend of Ziran tools and her own makeshift devices. Sparks of soft light danced across the armor as the energy filaments realigned. The human ingenuity was clear. Zara was solving the problem in a way that alien minds could not imagine. Hours turned into a full cycle. Food and rest were forgotten as she worked tirelessly, guided by curiosity, observation, and an instinctive understanding of complex systems. The queen, instead of pacing or bellowing, watched with fascination, occasionally tilting her head, observing how a human could handle technology in ways her own species had overlooked. By the end of the cycle, Zara stepped back. The armor glowed with a steady light, responsive and stable. She had managed to solve what no Ziran technician could, not through force, but through patience and creativity. The queen's voice echoed in the chamber, not loud, not commanding, but with a note of approval and amusement. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as my advisors claim." Zara smiled, exhausted but proud. She had not only fixed the armor's immediate issues but had begun to unlock its secrets. She had earned the attention of a species that rarely acknowledged human skill, simply by being herself, resourceful, patient, and willing to understand before acting. As she left the chamber, a soft thought passed through her mind. This was only the beginning. If a human could repair the queen's armor, what other impossible tasks could humanity accomplish in the galaxy? The Ziran flagship was unlike any station Zara had ever seen. Its corridors curved like flowing rivers, lit with colors that shifted depending on the angle of the light. The walls seemed almost alive, pulsing softly with energy that she could feel through the soles of her boots. Humans had built machines, but the Zirans had built living architecture where technology and artistry intertwined. Zara moved carefully, not wanting to misstep or disturb the delicate balance around her. She was escorted through a series of vast chambers by two Ziran courtiers. Their eyes, iridescent and ever-shifting in color, never left her. They spoke little, and when they did, their words were clipped and precise, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Zara felt the weight of their gaze, but she held her head high. Humans had always faced challenges where others doubted them. This was no different. At last she reached the queen's chamber, a massive hall that seemed to expand infinitely. The walls were lined with panels of polished crystal that reflected the soft glow of the central dais, where the queen awaited. She was sitting, or perhaps standing, in a way that made it difficult to tell, her massive frame seeming to float above the floor. Every scale shimmered in a delicate pattern, as if her body itself was a display of energy. Zara Kincaid. The queen's voice resonated throughout the hall, softer than the earlier bellow but still commanding. "You have returned. You will begin your work." Zara bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty. I am ready." The queen's courtiers shifted uncomfortably. They had never seen a human approach her with such calm confidence. Most species quaked in her presence, but Zara's steady gaze and careful movement suggested a mind focused and unafraid. The armor lay on a raised platform, its segments pulsating faintly. Zara knelt and examined it carefully, noting every curve, every filament of energy, every joint that could move. Unlike Ziran technicians, who often relied on brute force and standardized protocols, Zara observed quietly. She ran her fingers over the energy lines, feeling how the armor responded to touch. Each movement sent a subtle ripple through the plating, as if the suit itself was alive. One of the courtiers hissed softly. "Do you think a human can manage this?" Zara didn't answer. She focused, as she always did, on the task. To understand the armor, she had to communicate with it through observation and gentle manipulation. She studied the energy filaments, noticing that they responded not just to touch but to thought patterns. A careful push here, a gentle twist there, and the armor shimmered differently. The queen leaned forward, her massive eyes fixed on Zara. Humans are curious creatures. I wonder if you can truly understand the complexity of this suit. Zara smiled faintly. I won't claim to understand it completely, Your Majesty, but I can observe, learn, and respond. That has always been enough to solve problems. The queen's expression softened, a subtle shift that even a human could sense. It was the first sign of interest she had shown since Zara arrived. Zara began her work systematically. First, she mapped the energy pathways, tracing each filament and noting how it connected to the armor's core systems. She noticed that the armor had adaptive functions, shifting slightly based on the wearer's presence. Most Xeran engineers ignored this, considering it a minor quirk. But Zara saw it as the key to stabilization. Hours passed. The courtiers whispered among themselves, amazed by the human's methodical approach. She did not rush. She did not panic when a filament resisted. Instead, she observed, adjusted, and adapted. This was what humans excelled at, flexibility combined with patience. Finally, Zara paused to review her observations. She realized that the armor's reactions were linked to the queen's energy patterns, not just mechanical function. If she could synchronize the repair process with those patterns, the armor would stabilize perfectly. It was an idea that Xeran technicians would never attempt. They preferred rigid procedures and brute calculations. You understand it better than I expected. Human. The queen's voice was almost thoughtful. Proceed, but do not fail. This armor is not merely a tool. It is a part of me. Zara nodded. I will proceed carefully. She pulled out a set of custom tools she had designed on the shuttle, small devices capable of adjusting the delicate filaments without overloading the energy lines. She worked with careful precision, adjusting tiny nodes, recalibrating adaptive segments, and slowly aligning the suit to the queen's energy patterns. As she worked, she noticed the armor responding to subtle gestures, flexing slightly when she adjusted a filament, vibrating faintly in approval. It was alive, but it trusted her approach. The first time a machine responded to human intuition rather than force, she thought with a small smile. The queen, who had remained largely silent, leaned forward to observe closely. Her massive eyes narrowed not in anger but in curiosity. She was intrigued by the human's method. Unlike the Xerans, who often relied on precision alone, Zara combined observation, creativity, and empathy, producing results that traditional methods could not achieve. Hours turned into a cycle. Zara worked tirelessly, focused entirely on the task. She ignored hunger, fatigue, and the gentle protests of her own body. This was more than a repair. It was a dialogue between human ingenuity and alien technology. Finally, Zara stepped back, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. The armor glowed softly, stable, responsive, and alive. It had accepted her adjustments. She had succeeded where no Xeran technician could. The queen's voice filled the chamber, calm but with a note of admiration. You are clever, human. You approach the impossible in ways we cannot imagine. I did not expect this. Zara exhaled, a small smile on her face. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only observed and adjusted. The armor guided me. The queen tilted her massive head, studying her carefully. Perhaps humans are not as fragile as my advisors claim. You possess qualities that we have long underestimated. It was the first time the queen had acknowledged a human in such a way. Zara felt a surge of pride tempered by relief. She had not only repaired the armor, but had begun to earn the queen's respect. The courtiers whispered among themselves, astonished. They had never seen a human handle technology like this. They had expected failure or at best hesitation. Instead, they witnessed confidence, creativity, and patience, traits that even the mighty Xeran sometimes overlooked. Zara packed her tools carefully, noting every adjustment she had made. There would be follow-up repairs, minor tweaks, but the core problem was solved. The queen's armor was stable, functional, and ready for her to wear once more. The queen's massive eyes softened, a rare gesture of approval. You have earned my attention, human engineer. Do not disappoint it. Zara bowed slightly. I will not, Your Majesty. As she left the chamber, she felt a quiet thrill. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as small and fragile. Yet here she was, demonstrating that patience, observation, and ingenuity could overcome challenges that even advanced alien species struggled with. The Queen's gaze lingered on her as she departed. There was curiosity there, yes, but also a hint of respect. She had seen something in this human, a spark that might shape the way her people viewed humanity in the future. Zara returned to her shuttle, her mind already racing with possibilities. If she could repair a queen's armor, what other impossible tasks could humans tackle? The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, and filled with civilizations that often underestimated humanity. The next day, Zara returned to the Queen's chamber with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had completed the initial stabilization of the armor, but she knew that adaptive technology like this rarely stayed completely stable for long. The armor was alive in a sense, reacting to energy, emotion, and the subtle intentions of its wearer. Even after her careful work, it could behave unpredictably. The Queen was already present, her immense form leaning gracefully over the platform. She watched Zara as she unpacked her tools, scales glinting softly in the chamber's ambient light. The armor is behaving oddly. You will continue your work. Do not fail, Zara nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. I will proceed carefully. She knelt beside the armor and ran her fingers lightly over the energy filaments. At first it seemed normal, humming steadily. But as she started the deeper analysis, she noticed something unusual. Tiny fluctuations in the energy nodes that were not there before. The filaments shifted slightly as if the armor was reacting to an unseen force. Her human intuition kicked in. This isn't a malfunction, she muttered to herself. It's responding to something. Maybe to emotions? The idea seemed strange, but Zara had learned long ago that advanced technology often had quirks that could not be predicted. Humans had always solved problems creatively, thinking outside conventional rules. She began to carefully test the theory, making small adjustments while watching how the armor reacted. Sure enough, when she made a slow, deliberate movement, the armor's energy nodes responded positively. When she moved too quickly, they resisted, stiffening in a way that suggested the suit was testing her touch, her patience, her intentions. The Queen leaned forward, intrigued. You speak to the armor as if it understands you. Do humans often converse with machines? Zara smiled faintly. Not always, Your Majesty, but sometimes machines respond better to observation and care than to force. This one, it seems to need that, the courtiers whispered, amazed. None of them had ever thought of approaching technology this way. Zeran engineers were precise, disciplined, and unyielding. Zara's methods were unconventional, but the results were undeniable. Hours passed as she continued the delicate adjustments. She traced the energy lines, recalibrated nodes, and synchronized the adaptive filaments with the Queen's energy patterns. Slowly, the armor began to respond smoothly, almost as if it trusted her. Suddenly, a sharp vibration ran through the armor, more intense than anything Zara had felt before. The filaments pulsed erratically, and tiny sparks of energy danced across the surface. It was a reaction she had not anticipated. Zara's heart raced. She realized that the armor was reacting to her own energy and emotions. Her excitement, her anxiety, even her curiosity were influencing the suit. If she panicked, it could destabilize the entire system. She took a deep breath, calming herself. Human adaptability, she reminded herself. Patience and observation would guide her through this. She carefully adjusted a node, then stepped back slightly to observe. The armor pulsed softly, stabilizing. Slowly it aligned with her intentions, as if it understood that she meant no harm. The Queen's eyes glimmered with interest. A human capable of influencing armor with thought and care. Impressive. Tell me, how do you achieve this? Zara chuckled softly. It's not just me, Your Majesty. It's understanding, observation, responding to what the armor shows me rather than forcing it to do what I want. The Queen tilted her head, scales shimmering in curiosity. Perhaps your species has a quality we have long underestimated. Flexibility, adaptability, intuition. Zara smiled faintly. Humans were often seen as fragile, weak, or unpredictable by other species. Yet here, her very nature, curiosity, creativity, patience, was solving problems that advanced alien technology could not. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A faint crackling sound ran through the energy lines of the armor. Zara leaned in, inspecting carefully. One of the central nodes had begun to overload slightly. This could escalate if left unchecked. Other technicians would have panicked, pulling out heavy tools or forcing the circuits back into alignment. But Zara's approach was different. She listened to the armor, noting how it reacted to her movements. Then she crafted a subtle, human-designed adjustment. Using a small tool, she redirected the energy flow gradually, allowing the node to stabilize without shocking the entire system. The queen watched silently, fascinated. Zara's hands moved carefully yet confidently. It was clear that she understood more than the mechanics. She understood the behavior, the personality of the technology itself. Hours turned into cycles, but Zara barely noticed. Hunger, fatigue, and discomfort were forgotten as she immersed herself in the process. She tweaked nodes, realigned filaments, and monitored responses. Each adjustment brought the armor closer to perfect harmony. Finally, the armor responded smoothly to her touch, energy flowing evenly through every segment. The adaptive functions synchronized perfectly with the queen's energy patterns. Zara stepped back, exhausted but triumphant. The queen's deep melodic voice echoed through the chamber. "Remarkable. You have achieved what no Xeran engineer could. This human demonstrates patience, observation, and creativity. Perhaps there is more to your species than I was told." Zara bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only followed what the armor showed me." The queen leaned back, scales shimmering thoughtfully. "Humans, they are unpredictable, yes, but perhaps in ways that are beneficial. You remind me that intelligence is not only measured by rules and protocols, but by insight and adaptability," the courtiers whispered excitedly. Never before had a human earned such praise from the queen. They observed in awe as Zara packed her tools, each movement careful, precise, and respectful. Even as she left the chamber for a brief rest, Zara reflected on what had happened. Humans were underestimated, often dismissed as fragile or limited, yet their creativity, patience, and problem-solving skills allowed them to excel in ways other species could not imagine. Later, in the quiet of her shuttle, Zara allowed herself a small smile. She had proven something, not just to the queen, but to herself. Human ingenuity could succeed where even the most advanced alien systems struggled. The queen's voice echoed softly in her memory. "Perhaps your species has a quality we have long underestimated." Zara nodded quietly. It was not arrogance, but a quiet satisfaction. She was a human, solving a problem no one else could, using nothing but observation, patience, and understanding, the core qualities that made humans remarkable. As the cycle ended and the flagship continued its silent orbit around the star, Zara prepared for the next stage. The armor had stabilized, but she knew there would be more challenges. Each one would test her patience, her insight, and her ingenuity. And she was ready. Humans had always risen to the impossible, and she intended to continue doing just that. Somewhere deep within the flagship, the queen's eyes followed her. There was curiosity, respect, and perhaps a growing fascination. The human engineer had shown that sometimes the smallest species could achieve the greatest feats. This was only the beginning of a remarkable story, one in which human ingenuity would shine in ways no one could predict. The chamber was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the adaptive armor and the distant vibrations of the flagship. Zara Kincaid had grown accustomed to the unusual rhythm of the queen's suit. She had spent hours observing, adjusting, and responding to its energy patterns. What had begun as a simple repair had transformed into a delicate partnership between human intuition and alien technology. Zara knelt beside the armor, running her fingers lightly over the energy filaments. Everything seemed stable, at least at first. Then she noticed a faint pulse that didn't align with her previous observations. A subtle crackle of energy ran through the core node, irregular and unpredictable. "Not again," Zara muttered under her breath. She leaned closer, carefully analyzing the pattern. The anomaly was small but left unchecked. It could affect the armor's balance, its responsiveness, and even the wearer's comfort. The queen observed silently, her massive eyes narrowed. She had watched Zara work for cycles, intrigued by the human's patience and skill, yet now she seemed slightly tense. The irregular energy pulse was unfamiliar even to her, and she trusted no one to handle it but this lone human. Zara's mind raced. She had faced adaptive systems before, but nothing as complex as this. The armor's behavior seemed almost emotional. It reacted not just to physical adjustments but to intent and subtle energy cues. A machine with personality perhaps, but one that required careful negotiation rather than brute force. Her hands moved gently, adjusting tiny nodes, rerouting energy flows in small increments. The Queen's courtiers whispered quietly behind her, astonished at the human's skill and calm demeanor. No Xiran technician would have attempted such delicate maneuvers. They relied on protocols and raw power, not observation and intuition. Minutes passed. The armor stabilized briefly, only to pulse again unpredictably. Zara paused, thinking. Humans excelled at improvisation, finding solutions when plans failed. She realized that the armor was not malfunctioning. It was responding to the emotional and mental state of its handler. Taking a deep breath, she focused on calming her own thoughts, aligning her energy intentionally with the patterns of the armor. Slowly, she adjusted a central node, watching the response. The armor pulsed softly, then settled. It was subtle but significant. She had discovered the key. Empathy and observation mattered as much as technical skill. The Queen leaned forward, scales shimmering in soft light. Fascinating. You do not approach with force or protocol, human. You adjust to the armor's nature itself. Zara smiled faintly. I try to understand it, Your Majesty. Machines, especially advanced ones, often respond better to care than pressure. The Queen tilted her massive head, studying her. A human understands harmony. Perhaps your species possesses qualities we have long overlooked. Zara continued her work, fine-tuning the connections between the armor's adaptive circuits. Each adjustment was careful, deliberate. The energy flows began to align more fully, pulsating in harmony rather than fluctuation. Slowly, the armor seemed to recognize her intent, responding almost willingly to her touch. Then, an unexpected event occurred. A small segment of the armor's energy lattice began to overload briefly, sending faint sparks across the surface. The courtiers gasped, alarmed, and a few stepped forward instinctively to intervene. Stop, Zara called sharply, raising her hand. It's fine. I can handle this. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, surprised that a human dared to stop her own technicians. But she trusted Zara. After hours of observation, she had begun to recognize the human's unique approach to problem-solving, a blend of creativity, observation, and calm determination. Zara studied the overloaded node carefully. For the Xirans, the obvious solution would have been to cut power abruptly, risking destabilization. Zara thought differently. She improvised a gradual redirection of energy, using a small human-made tool to guide the flow without shocking the system. The node pulsed, then settled. Harmony returned to the armor. The Queen exhaled softly. You see things differently, human. You do not force solutions, but discover them. This is remarkable, Zara nodded. Sometimes the solution is not about power, Your Majesty. It's about understanding how each part interacts with the whole. The Queen's massive eyes glimmered with interest, a subtle smile forming across her features. Perhaps humans possess insight we have long ignored. You adapt, improvise, and think beyond protocols. Your species has potential. For the first time, Zara felt a connection beyond engineer and machine. She realized that this was also a moment of mutual understanding between human and alien. The Queen, who had always ruled with strict authority, seemed genuinely intrigued by her approach. And Zara, who had always relied on observation and empathy, recognized the Queen's willingness to learn from someone of another species. They worked together in silence for a time. Zara adjusted circuits, calibrated nodes, and observed the subtle shifts in energy patterns. The armor hummed steadily, responsive and stable, reflecting both human ingenuity and Xiran design. It was a partnership, not of species, but of minds and methods. Finally, Zara stepped back. The armor was functioning flawlessly. The energy flows were smooth. The adaptive circuits aligned perfectly with the Queen's patterns. Even the previously erratic node pulsed steadily, in perfect rhythm with the rest of the suit. The Queen rose from her dais, towering above Zara, yet radiating a quiet grace. You have proven your skill, human. But more than that, you have shown understanding. This is rare among my advisors and technicians alike. Zara bowed slightly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only observed and responded to what the armor showed me. It guided the process. The Queen's eyes softened. You are different. Your species. They are unpredictable, yes, but in ways that are valuable. You see possibilities where others see limits. For a moment, the chamber was quiet, the hum of the armor the only sound. Zara realized that she had not only repaired the Queen's armor, but had earned her respect. The courtiers whispered quietly, impressed by the human's accomplishments and calm demeanor. Zara carefully packed her tools, making sure every adjustment was recorded and every observation noted. She had not only solved the technical challenges but had also demonstrated the uniquely human qualities of observation, empathy, and creative problem-solving. The Queen's gaze followed her as she moved toward the exit. "Perhaps humans are not what we assumed. Perhaps your species has more to offer the galaxy than we imagined." Zara smiled faintly, feeling the truth of the Queen's words. Humans were often underestimated, seen as small or fragile. Yet their ingenuity, patience, and ability to adapt allowed them to succeed in situations that others found impossible. As she left the chamber, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The armor was stable, the Queen was impressed, and the possibilities for humanity in this galaxy had just expanded. In the quiet of her shuttle, Zara allowed herself a small smile. She had proven that humans could succeed where even advanced alien technology struggled. Observation, creativity, and patience. These were qualities that no protocol or brute force could replace. And somewhere deep within the flagship, the Queen pondered the human engineer who had shown such skill and understanding. There was curiosity, respect, and perhaps a growing fascination. The human had not only repaired her armor, but had demonstrated qualities that could reshape how her people viewed humanity. This moment marked a turning point. Zara had not only solved a technical challenge but had forged a connection between human and alien, a bond built on observation, understanding, and mutual respect. The adventure was far from over. The armor was stabilized, yes, but the galaxy held countless mysteries, and humans had a unique way of facing them, with ingenuity, patience, and creativity. For Zara, the next challenges awaited. And she knew as she looked toward the stars from the flagship's observation deck that human potential had only begun to show itself. The chamber was brighter than before, filled with soft golden light from the crystal panels along the walls. Zara Kincaid walked carefully, carrying her tools with practiced precision. Today was not about repairs or adjustments. It was about recognition. The Ziran Queen had summoned her, not to test her skills, but to honor them. Zara's thoughts drifted back to her time on Orion Station. She had spent years repairing drones, ships, and other technology, often overlooked by aliens and humans alike. And now here she was, acknowledged by one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The reality was still sinking in. The Queen sat on her dais, her massive form radiating authority and grace. Her scales shimmered in patterns that seemed almost like a crown of light. Courtiers and advisors lined the chamber, their expressions a mixture of awe, respect, and curiosity. Today they would witness a human celebrated for ingenuity, something they had never seen before. Zara Kincaid. The Queen's voice filled the chamber, deep and resonant. "You have repaired my armor, stabilized its energy, and shown understanding that surpasses even my best technicians. You have proven that humans are more capable than we have assumed." Zara bowed low, feeling the weight of the moment. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only followed what the armor showed me. It guided the work." The Queen inclined her massive head. "Yes, and you listened. You observed, adapted, and created solutions where others could not. This is rare. Very rare. Humans possess a spark that we have long ignored." Murmurs ran through the courtiers. Some whispered in disbelief, a human receiving praise from the Queen herself. Others nodded subtly, impressed by what they had seen over the past cycles. Zara's calm and focused approach had changed perceptions, and it was clear that this day would be remembered for a long time. The Queen gestured, and two courtiers stepped forward, placing a ceremonial energy cloak near the dais. Its light shimmered like liquid, shifting in colors that echoed the Queen's scales. "This is to honor your work, human. Wear it not as a sign of servitude, but as recognition of your skill and insight." Zara took the cloak carefully. Its energy pulsed softly, recognizing her presence. She draped it over her shoulders and felt warmth and acceptance. The Queen watched closely, her expression unreadable at first, then softening into something almost like pride. "You have not only repaired my armor but reminded us all of the power of observation, patience, and creativity. Your species is underestimated by many, but you have shown that humans can achieve the impossible. Zara smiled faintly. I am grateful, Your Majesty. I hope this shows that humans are not just resilient. They are inventive, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary things when given the chance. The Queen's massive eyes gleamed. You have proven that. Humans are no longer a species we can dismiss lightly. We will welcome your engineers in our projects. Your insights may guide the future of our technology. A wave of excitement ran through the courtiers. The Queen was not only praising a human, but extending an offer of collaboration. It was unprecedented. Humans had always been outsiders in interstellar affairs, underestimated by most alien civilizations. Now, through Zara, the Zirans were acknowledging human ingenuity as worthy of respect and partnership. Zara nodded, humbled and inspired. She realized that this moment was not just about her. It was about the potential of humanity, their creativity, courage, and ability to solve problems that others found impossible. Humans had always faced challenges with limited resources, improvisation, and ingenuity. Here, those same traits were finally recognized on a galactic scale. The Queen's gaze softened further. Zara Kincaid, your work has created a bridge between our species. This is only the beginning. You will return to your station, but know that your influence will spread across our empire. Zara felt a quiet thrill. This was more than recognition. It was a promise of opportunity. Humans could now contribute in ways previously unimaginable, and she had played a role in opening that door. The Queen's massive form shifted slightly, a gesture that seemed almost playful. And tell me, human, who fixed my armor again? Zara laughed softly, the tension of the past cycles melting away. That would be me, Your Majesty. The Queen's eyes glimmered, a subtle smile forming. Excellent. I will remember your name. The courtiers whispered excitedly among themselves, some taking mental notes, others exchanging astonished glances. A human had not only solved an impossible problem, but had done so with ingenuity, patience, and insight. It was a moment of human triumph, quiet but undeniable. Zara spent the next few cycles in the flagship, documenting the armor's systems, noting every observation, and preparing detailed instructions for future Ziran technicians. She worked diligently, knowing that her contributions would guide not only the Queen, but countless others. Throughout this time, she observed a subtle shift in the flagship's environment. The courtiers were more open, the technicians more willing to learn from her methods, and even the Queen occasionally consulted her on small adjustments. Humans had earned a place of respect, not through force or conquest, but through skill, patience, and ingenuity. One evening, as Zara prepared to return to her shuttle, the Queen approached her. You have done well, human. Your species has potential we will not forget. The galaxy may be vast, but humans now have a place in it. Do not waste it. Zara bowed. I won't, Your Majesty. Humanity will continue to learn, grow, and contribute wherever we can. The Queen's gaze lingered for a moment, thoughtful. I look forward to seeing what your people can achieve. You have set an example not only for humans, but for all who work with technology. Creativity, observation, patience, these are qualities we often overlook. Your example will remind us to value them. Zara left the chamber feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had come to repair armor, but she was leaving with something far greater: recognition, respect, and the promise of interstellar collaboration. As she boarded her shuttle, she looked out at the vast expanse of space. Stars twinkled like scattered gems, and she felt a surge of hope. Humans had always faced challenges and often succeeded against the odds. Now she realized the galaxy was ready to see what humans could do. Back on Orion Station, news of her achievement spread quickly. Other engineers, both human and alien, were inspired by her success. They marveled at her methods, studied her notes, and began to see that human ingenuity could solve problems others deemed impossible. Zara herself returned to her small workshop, quietly resuming her routine, yet she knew her life, and the lives of other humans, had changed. The Queen's recognition was more than a personal triumph. It was a shift in perspective for an entire species.